I'm over a month into the 90-day Great Lock-In, and I've read a few books as part of my personal curriculum. So I thought I'd share today some of the top takeaways in two of these books that I think could be helpful for all of you watching as well. I'll make sure to link below the books too in case you want to read them on your own. And so let's go ahead and dive in to the first book. I'm going to be referencing the books on my laptop it's on my lap here, so you'll notice that throughout this video. But the first book is called Rewrite Your Rules, Their Journey to Success in Less Time with More Freedom. And that's by Morgan DeBon, founder and CEO of Blavity Inc. And so on the whole, I do recommend reading the whole book, but a few highlights that, again, could be pertinent to you now, especially when you start thinking about how you might want to change things up in the new year. In the early days, in part 1, called Master Yourself, she talks about defining your purpose principle. So what is it that defines your purpose that would create a meaningful and fulfilling life if you actually worked towards this principle, like this statement? And so she has 3 steps for creating the statement. So step 1 is to reflect on your passions and your values. So taking some time and brainstorming, what are you passionate about? What do you really value in life? And kind of listing all that out in your journal. And the second step is identify how you want to make a difference. So this is something that I thought was really interesting about this book is it's not just like, oh, I want to, be healthier, or I want to have this kind of job. It's, like what change do you want to create in the world that's tied to your passions and your values? So I thought that was interesting. It's a very different way of thinking about things than I'm used to. So that is, that second step is, again, identify how you want to make a difference. And then you combine those 2 steps to step 3 to craft your because statement, right? So complete the phrase, I do this because, or because I'm, to articulate the driving force behind your actions, right? Your because should be a compelling reason that motivates you to keep going even when faced with challenges, okay? So it has kind of 3 things that your statement should do. So aligns with your core values and beliefs, provides a sense of meaning and purpose, inspires you to push through when things aren't going your way. So that's just something to consider as a first step, a first key takeaway was thinking about that purpose statement. And then later on, she talks about having, pillars, foundational pillars that, again, once you know your purpose, there's 6 pillars that are foundation for actually, reaching that purpose, working towards that purpose. And so in this case, she talks about, 2 pillars that are basically essential. So money and stability, right? And then you have growth pillars. So freedom, relationships, passions, and wellness. So 6 pillars in total. And so she goes through this and again gives suggestions, gives ideas for each of them, right? Examples of what these pillars are like potentially in your life or how you want to make them pillars in your life. So that was the second big takeaway from this book for me. And then finally, later on, she talks about this rich to wealthy mindset map. And it's kind of a map that you've seen before where it has 4 quadrants. And so on the top left, it's, things that are low cost, but then high joy. And then on the other side, you have, high joy and high cost. And then on the bottom, it's high cost, but low joy. And then on the left bottom, low cost and low joy. So to make it simpler, right? So you have on the x-axis, it's from low cost to high cost. And then on the y-axis, it's low joy to high joy. So kind of putting things on this map and realize, okay, this brings me a lot of joy, but it's very costly, either financially or time-wise or emotional labor or the case may be, right? But then you have things, hey, this is high joy and low cost. This is great. I should do this all the time to bring joy to my life, considering how low the cost it is, right? So if you put this all, things you do, things you could be doing on this map, then you find ways to make your life, wealthier by finding things, again, that's high joy, and then high joy and then low cost. But potentially, right, there might be reasons to do things that are also high cost, but bring you a lot of joy. And then again, doing less of the things that are low joy but high cost. Are they necessary? Can you change your life so they don't become necessary any longer? So it was definitely something to kind of think about as well. I'm not gonna get more into it, right? Go ahead and read the book. So they do talk about self-assessment as well, which we've talked about on the channel before, and really getting a sense of the data in your life and how you can improve your life by kind of seeing, hey, how often am I doing these things that are good for my mental health, are good for my physical health, are good for my emotional health, etc. Okay, these things I'm doing very rarely, and they could have massive positive effects. These things I'm doing a lot, and they're having massive negative effects, right? So kind of self-reflecting and getting a sense of how you can improve your life by changing your habits, by changing things that you do, right? So recommend reading it, especially like the first few chapters that are very practical, thinking about these various frameworks. And then that leads to Fired Up, and let me look up so Fired Up, how to turn your spark into a flame and come alive at any age. And that's by Shannon Watts. And so this is another one that I thought was interesting. I found the FIRE formula, as she calls it, very interesting. And you can definitely see connections to the earlier book, Rewrite Your Rules, because basically the formula here is your desires and your values and your abilities, right, come together to create, fire you up, to create fire in your life. And so she has starting in chapter 4, right, which is finding your fire formula, she starts talking about this. And again, you can see the connections to those earlier steps in the other book where like, okay, yes, find out what are you passionate about? What do you value? This adds in, what abilities do you have, right, that allow you to take action on these passions and these values. So it's a different way of thinking about things that I thought was beneficial. And, in the later chapter, she talks about finding the heat of your desires, right? So what really motivates you, right? What really inspires you tied to these desires. And then tapping into the oxygen of your values, right? So fire needs oxygen to keep surviving, and having values that matter to you can help, again, keep your passions alive because you know how much you value it. And then adding the fuel of your abilities, right? So again, these are the actual action steps that you take to move towards accomplishing what you're passionate about, and the values that you have in your life. So I do think that this one is a good read as well to think about, again, when you're brainstorming how you might want to change your life in the new year or right now, right? It's different ways of thinking about the same ideas, right? What can really motivate you to bring positive change to your life? So both of those are high on my personal curriculum. And the third one, I'm not gonna talk about too much in this video, but I also find it was my favorite of the 3, and that's the 5 types of wealth. And so in that case, there's obviously financial wealth, but also mental wealth, physical wealth, time wealth, right? And then community wealth, or it's actually called social wealth, not community. So just again, to clarify there, it's time, financial, mental, physical, and then social wealth. And again, this one was very practical to me. There are a lot of examples there. And so I do feel of the 3, like I'm actually considering buying this one just so I can write in it and highlight it, etc. All of them before I got from the library app. But definitely recommend this as my top one if you're only going to read one. But obviously it's very different, right? Because again, the first one, Rewrite Your Rules, and the second one, Fire It Up. They're very much about finding your purpose, realizing what your values are, what your passions are, what actions you can take to reach, your goals and such. This one is more like, hey, there's 5 types of wealth in your life. How wealthy are you in each of these categories? And then how can you improve your wealth in each of these categories going forward? So it's very different than the other 2, but it's still basically about changing your life for the better by reflecting on these elements and then creating change. So if you do want a full breakdown of this book in particular, just let me know in the comments below. But on the whole, curriculum's going really well, and I'm looking forward to the next book that I'll read, and I'll keep you updated as we go along. But I wanted to share these now because I do think it's a perfect time to start reflecting and brainstorming as we get closer and closer to the new year. So I hope you found this video interesting. Share with others if you think they would be motivated or be interested in this content as well. And I'll see you next time with a new video.